It showed up in my inbox like a bill you forgot existed, an email with the subject line, "You're invited," and nothing else. No message. No love, mom and dad. Just a group blast from a generic Gmail account I didn't recognize. The name on the invite said Marla, not Meryl. Marla. I stared at it for a good 10 minutes, not sure if I should be offended or amused. Maybe both. I hadn't spoken to my parents in over a year, not since my mother looked me in the eye and said, "If you walk away now, you're no longer family." I guess this was her way of, what? Extending an olive branch? Or twisting the knife? The email read like a press release. Join us for Ed and Lorraine's 40th anniversary celebration, with a clip art champagne glass and RSVP button. That was it. No call, no text, no apology. Just a cold, perfect little digital slap. I forwarded it to my therapist, Julia, who replied within 5 minutes. "What do you want to do?" And just like that, it wasn't about them anymore. It was about me, and the gnawing question of whether peace was worth the price of pride. I didn't answer Julia right away. Instead, I sat with it, let it boil quietly. Then I did what I always do when I don't know what to feel. I cleaned, scrubbed the bathroom floor, organized the spice rack, folded laundry until my hands hurt. But even under the hum of busy work, the question sat there. Was this really about celebrating an anniversary or staging a reckoning? It took me 3 days to RSVP. 3 days of going back and forth, of wondering if showing up would mean weakness or strength. I kept hearing my grandmother's voice in my head. She used to say, "Even broken bones need setting before they can heal." I didn't know if this would be healing, but it felt like something that needed to be faced. I chose a dress that didn't scream for attention, but didn't apologize either. Navy blue, structured, quiet power. Everything I picked, jewelry, shoes, even the clutch, was about control. If they were going to test me, I'd pass with flying colors. I emailed Harper, my cousin and the event planner, to ask about the seating arrangements. Her reply was short and oddly formal. "Details are still being finalized. Looking forward to seeing you." No smiley face, no warmth, just enough to keep it polite. I knew Harper. That tone wasn't hers. She was stalling or hiding something. And that's when it hit me. They were planning something. I just didn't know what. The golf club looked exactly like I remembered, polished, manicured, and deeply uncomfortable. Valet took my keys like I was supposed to be grateful for the privilege. I walked through the glass doors and was greeted by a jazz trio playing Moon River like it was the national anthem. I paused at the entrance to scan the room. Clusters of familiar faces turned toward me, not dramatically, not rudely, but just long enough, a flicker of recognition, a blink of surprise, a whisper between spouses. My name was on their lips before I even said hello. Except, it wasn't, because when I reached the seating chart, taped delicately to a gilded easel by the bar, my name wasn't there. Not Marla. Not Meryl. Nothing. I stood there for a beat too long, hoping maybe there was a mistake. Maybe my card fell off. That's when Harper came rushing over, smile brittle, eyes darting. "Oh, there you are. We were just about to. Come, let me show you." She led me past cousins I hadn't seen since college, past aunts who had once braided my hair, all the way to a small round table near the swinging doors of the kitchen. The restroom sign flickered directly above my chair. I sat down slowly, like lowering myself into cold water. Everyone else sat in large family clusters, clinking glasses, leaning in for photos. And here I was, next to a tray of extra cutlery and the faint scent of cleaning solution. Delia, my older sister, waved at me from across the room, that fake, too big smile she wore when she wanted to look like the bigger person. I returned a nod, nothing more. Control isn't silence, it's precision. I folded my napkin, I took a sip of water, and I waited. Part of me wanted to leave. Get up, walk out the same door I came in through and never look back. It would have been so easy. No one had expected me here anyway. But I didn't move. Years ago, at Delia's baby shower, I'd been cut out of the family photo because I had shown up late. I'd told myself it didn't matter, that photos fade, that memories aren't always accurate. But that day had branded something into me. This time, I wasn't going to vanish because someone else wanted me gone. A waiter stopped at my table, glanced at his list, and placed a small plate in front of me: chicken tenders, apple slices, a juice box, the kids' meal. I looked up at him and said, "This isn't mine." He blinked. "Oh, sorry, I'll fix it." I nodded, calm, quiet. Scanning the room, I read them like a script. A whispered joke at my expense, a hand over a mouth pretending to cough, people smiling too hard or not at all. I used to mistake silence for dignity, not anymore. The lights dimmed, a spotlight hit the stage. Harper stepped up and tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, if we could all take our seats, the program is about to begin." I straightened my back, folded my hands over my lap. Lorraine, my mother, walked onto the stage in a silver suit she wore for weddings and other occasions where appearances mattered more than truth. She took the mic from Harper with the grace of someone who believed the room owed her silence. She scanned the crowd. Then her eyes landed on me. "There's someone here tonight," she said slowly. "Someone we didn't expect. Someone who, in our eyes, no longer exists." The room went still, and just like that, I realized I had walked straight into an ambush, public and premeditated. My mother didn't blink when she said it. She stood beneath the soft yellow lights, her voice smooth, controlled. "There's someone here tonight who, though once part of this family, chose to walk away. And to us, she no longer exists." It was the kind of silence that thudded in your ears. All around the room, the laughter died mid-breath. Forks hovered over plates. Someone coughed and then regretted it. I sat at my table by the restrooms, feeling the full weight of that spotlight, even though it wasn't pointed at me. She didn't have to say my name. Everyone knew. Ed stood a step behind her, nodding along like an usher at a church sermon. Not one word from him. Just that look, half apologetic, half proud. Like he believed Lorraine had finally said what needed to be said. I didn't flinch. I didn't give them the satisfaction. In my mind, I heard a voice I hadn't heard in years. My grandmother used to say, "Dignity is grace under fire." And I sat there, jaw still, hands resting on my lap, burning but unmoved. They wanted me gone. But I was right there, and they'd have to pretend harder than that to erase me. As she stepped down, applause broke out. Not thunderous, not unanimous, but enough to sting. The ones who clapped too hard, the ones who looked down, the ones who couldn't meet my eyes. Then the slideshow started. Photos flickered across a large screen behind the stage. Childhood snapshots, beach vacations, birthdays, graduations. And one thing became painfully clear. I wasn't in them, not a single frame. Even group photos, cropped. Shots I remembered being in, reframed, erased. I stared at one picture longer than I should have. It used to hang in our living room. A 4th of July cookout. I had been in the center, laughing. Now, only the grill and the others remained. I turned to look for Harper, but she avoided my eyes. Delia's face appeared on the screen, smiling in almost every photo. Her name echoed through the mic next. "And of course," Lorraine said sweetly, "this event wouldn't have been possible without Delia, our rock, our pride." I didn't even blink. I just listened. Marcus leaned in and whispered something into Delia's ear. She smirked, glanced at me, then said under her breath, "She thought she'd get the credit." Credit? I looked around the room like I was cataloging evidence. Who clapped? Who didn't? Who avoided my gaze? Who whispered behind napkins? I wasn't here for sentiment anymore. I was collecting data. And just then, I remembered Grandma again. "You can't heal where you're not welcome." That wasn't just advice. It was a warning. The intent was crystal clear now. This wasn't a party. It was a stage, and the script had been written long before I arrived. A woman in a gold dress came up to me during the break, holding a cocktail in one hand and squinting. "Are you with the catering team?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. I smiled, leaned in just enough. "No, I'm Meryl, Ed and Lorraine's daughter." Her face flushed, and she mumbled an apology before hurrying off. I watched her heels click against the floor like punctuation. I didn't react. I didn't argue. I pulled out my phone and typed a short message to Harper. I know what you did. No response. The little bubble didn't even show up. So be it. I shifted in my seat. This wasn't about being seen anymore. This was about documenting every misstep, every slight, every lie. I'd come here thinking I was walking into a truce, but they'd choreographed a hit, and I wasn't leaving before I saw how far they'd go. When the cake came out, the lights dimmed again. I stayed seated, calmly watching. I had decided to see this play to the end, not to lash out, not to run, but to witness. While the crowd clapped and cooed over the elaborate tiered cake, I opened the banking app on my phone. Quietly, privately, I scrolled to the transfer from months ago, $15,000 wired directly to Harper to cover the venue's deposit. I had it all documented, every email, every message. It had been a gesture of peace, a way to contribute without making noise. I didn't want credit. I wanted to believe in rebuilding. But now, Lorraine lifted her glass and said, "A special thank you to Delia for making all of this possible." The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was sharp, like clapping after a slam dunk. Delia beamed, graciously nodding as if the check had cleared from her own account. I sat still, the glow of my phone screen reflecting off my glass of water. They'd tried to erase me, but I'd left fingerprints everywhere. It wasn't rage that filled me. It was clarity. Cold, precise. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't cry. I would simply remember, and I would act. As I watched them pose for pictures beside the cake I'd paid for, my phone buzzed again. A text. Unknown number. "They think you're powerless. You're not." I stared at the message, the sound of laughter fading behind me. The message burned on my screen, daring me to see the party not as humiliation, but as an opening move. I kicked off my heels the second I walked into the hotel room, dropped my bag on the dresser, and collapsed onto the edge of the bed. The party had ended over an hour ago, but my head kept replaying it like some twisted loop I couldn't shut off. Faces, smirks, applause that didn't belong to me. Their words, their silence. The room was dim, lit only by a single lamp near the mirror. I hadn't even taken off my makeup. I sat there staring at the floor when my phone buzzed on the nightstand again. Another anonymous text. "She used your money to boost her own credit score." Below it was a screenshot. Harper's Venmo activity. Transfers rerouted. One with a memo. "Thanks again, D." The edges of my vision narrowed. My chest didn't tighten. I was past that. I clicked the sender's number. No ID. Blocked. I tried calling Harper, straight to voicemail. I didn't leave one. There was no point. I leaned back into the pillows, phone still in hand. So, Harper rerouted the money I gave her, for the party, into her own accounts. And Delia was involved. If Harper was willing to do that, what else had she helped them hide? This wasn't an accident. This wasn't dysfunction. It was an operation. I stood up slowly, made a beeline to the closet and pulled out my laptop bag, booted up the machine and waited. 5 years of questions were about to come knocking. I hadn't thought about the Seattle firm in a long time. It used to sting too much. They had flown me out, put me up in a nice hotel, even toured me around their office. We shook hands, smiled for photos. Then, nothing. No follow-up, no offer. Just a short email from the front desk assistant. "We've decided to pursue other candidates. Best wishes." It never made sense, until tonight. I opened an archived folder, buried deep in my old Gmail. I found the draft. An email addressed to the firm's senior partner, from me, supposedly, dated 2 days after my interview. But I hadn't written it. "Thank you for the opportunity," it began professionally, before veering into passive-aggressive language. "I'm reconsidering whether your firm's values align with mine. Your team seemed overextended and underwhelming." There it was, subtle enough to seem real, but enough to pull the plug. And the last editor on the file? Delia. She'd had access to my laptop back then when she helped me pack after a breakup. I sat there frozen, reading it over and over. That job would have changed everything. I would have moved, started clean, built something that wasn't touched by them. They didn't just erase me tonight, they clipped my wings years ago. I sat still for a long time, long enough that the air conditioner kicked on and startled me. I didn't cry, not at first, but when I did, it was quiet. There was no sobbing, no drama, just silent, slow tears that dried before they ever hit my neck. I wasn't crying over the betrayal. I was crying because I'd spent years thinking I was crazy, that I'd missed something, misunderstood it all. But I wasn't paranoid. I was unprotected. I pulled the hotel notepad toward me, grabbed a pen, and started listing names, dates, money sent, who was where, when. I flipped back and connected the dots. Emails, transfers, job offers, social appearances. This wasn't family dysfunction. This was sabotage, coordinated, precise, systemic. They hadn't pushed me away. They had orchestrated my removal. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Not a text. A call. I hesitated, then answered. "You don't know me," the voice said. Male. Calm. "But I've been watching them too." "Who is this?" I asked. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I can't tell you that, not yet. But you need to check your father's tax filings, 2019. That's when it changed. That's when you were cut out." I stayed silent. My brain moved faster than my words could. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. He didn't answer that either. The call ended. No name, no trace. Just that voice, and that clue. I stared at my phone for a moment before flipping it onto the bed. Then I turned back to the laptop. I'd worked on a fraud case last year, had credentials to access certain IRS files for a limited time. The system might still recognize my clearance. My hands trembled as I typed. But not from fear. This time, it was focus. I barely slept. By the time the sun cracked through the cheap hotel curtains, I was already at the little table by the window, coffee from the lobby growing cold beside me, my laptop open and waiting. The voice from last night still echoed. "Check your father's tax filings from 2019. I didn't know who that man was, but he'd struck a chord I couldn't ignore. I logged into the encrypted tool from my paralegal days, something I wasn't technically supposed to have anymore, but it still worked. I typed in my father's name, then his social security number. What came up? Stopped me cold. Grayson Holdings, LLC, registered in California, listed address, our old house, the one I grew up in, but the name under founding officer? Mine. I clicked again. Everything matched. My full legal name, my signature, copied from a decades-old school form, no doubt, the filing date. Just a month before, he told me to stop digging into things I didn't understand. He'd used my identity to create a shell company. For tax shielding. For something worse. I didn't even know yet. I sat still. No shaking this time. No racing heart. Just heat. Burning in my chest, behind my eyes. They had erased me in public. Mocked me in front of their friends. But in private, they stole from me and used me. I closed the tab and picked up my phone. Called Jeremy, an old bank manager I used to work with. We hadn't spoken in years, but he answered on the second ring. "Jeremy, it's Merrill. I need to ask about a trust. From my grandfather." He paused. "Merrill? Yeah, hold on." A minute later, he was back. "It's almost depleted. Drawdowns started in 2017, all approved by your joint custodian. Says here, Ed Thomas." I hung up before I could curse out loud. I didn't even know the trust existed. My mother always said, "Your grandfather didn't believe in handouts." But apparently, he did believe in securing my future, just not from the people I needed securing from. They drained it. They made me think I had nothing, while living off what was meant for me. I grabbed a pen. Wrote the date, 2017. Circled it. Then started building a timeline. Everything lined up. The job in Seattle? 2018. My credit score drop, unexplained. 2019. That weird IRS letter I got last year, saying I had unclaimed business income? 2021. All of it. Connected. Delia's smug little smile whenever I talked about saving. Ed's casual dismissal of your generation's entitlement. Lorraine's fake surprise when I struggled to pay for law school. It wasn't neglect, it was strategy. And Delia, she had to know. She was too close to Ed, always covering for him, always telling me, "He's old school, you're just reading too much into things." No, she wasn't naive. She was complicit. I printed everything. Page after page of bank transfers, business filings, even screen grabs of old emails. Every click felt heavier than the last. At 11:42 a.m., I packed it all into a folder and headed for the public library. I didn't trust hotel Wi-Fi, didn't trust my own devices. I used one of the public computers in the back, the kind that makes you sign in with ID and a time limit. Then I emailed a full encrypted backup to Camille, an old law school friend in New York. Just in case, I asked her to hold it. No explanation yet, just insurance. Then I headed to the library notary office. I needed timestamps, official signatures, proof I hadn't doctored any of it later. The woman behind the desk glanced at the paperwork, then at me. I must have looked like I hadn't slept. She didn't ask questions. She just notarized every page. As I stepped outside, the sun felt too bright, too loud. I had spent the last hour building my case, careful, quiet, methodical. But I wasn't doing this for closure anymore. Closure was something you give to people who wronged you by accident. This wasn't that. This was theft, fraud, a lifetime of gaslighting, documented now. I was walking toward my car in the lot when I saw it. A dark blue sedan, parked in the corner, engine off, windows halfway down, and in the driver's seat, Lorraine, my mother, wearing sunglasses and that same beige sweater she wore to church every Sunday, her hands on the wheel like she was just passing through, but she wasn't. She was waiting. I stopped walking, watched her watching me. That wasn't coincidence. That was a move. It was past midnight when I got back to the room. I didn't turn on the lights, just let the glow of my phone screen guide me to the edge of the bed. I sat down, opened Instagram, and there it was, Delia's post. A filtered photo of the ballroom from the night before, the decorations perfectly lit, the floral centerpieces I had personally selected from catalogs last spring, the table cards I had designed on Adobe after 2 sleepless nights. Caption: honored to have coordinated all the legacy pieces for Mom and Dad's special night. Legacy pieces. She even used the term I coined when I pitched the theme last fall. I scrolled to the last slide, credits scanned from the printed program. Under Event Planning Creative Direction, Delia Thomas. Not even a mention of me. But I knew those fonts, knew the way the calligraphy curved into a left slant, knew the soft gray palette I used to balance the lighting, knew my own work, and she'd taken it like it was hers. I stared at the screen until my jaw hurt. Thought of Maya Angelou's line, "They may erase your name, but not your existence." That line hit different now. I typed out a message to Marcus. "Nice work on our decor. No emoji, no punctuation, just that." Then I turned my phone off. It buzzed 10 minutes later anyway. "Hey," Calder's voice. He hadn't changed his number. I didn't answer right away, but something in me said, "Take it." "Meryl," he said. "I saw Delia's post. Did she steal from you again?" I didn't respond, just listened. "I found something, a while ago. Didn't think much of it back then, but now, I think you need to see it." He paused. "Documents. Financial. She's linked to something. I don't know. A network. Shells, maybe." I sat up straighter. "You're only telling me now?" I asked. "I didn't know if I could trust you'd believe me." That stopped me. Or maybe he didn't know if I'd believe he was clean in this. I said, "Forward them." "Are you okay?" he added. I hung up. I laid back and stared at the ceiling, not blinking. The white tiles looked like a map I couldn't read yet. Somewhere in my chest was a feeling I didn't recognize, not sadness, something older than that. I saw a flash of our childhood Christmas, me cutting paper snowflakes, glitter stuck to my fingers, Delia smiling as she walked in. Then later, Mom bragging to the guests, "Delia made these ornaments by hand." That was always the story. She got the credit. I got the cleanup. I turned on the lamp and sat down at the desk. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to type a public post. I had the receipts now. Names, photos, dates, but I deleted it. It wasn't the right time. Emotion makes noise. Strategy makes impact. I grabbed my hoodie and headed out. By the time I reached the event venue, it was near closing. I didn't go in, just walked by slow, pretending to check my phone. I paused by the signage wall, took a quick shot of the board listing vendors, scanned for anything unusual. And there it was, a tag on one of the floral panels. Designed by M. No full name, no brand, but mine. I crouched and took a photo of that, too. And then I heard it. Low voices inside, then a door creaking. I stepped back into shadow. Waited. Nothing more. But I started recording. A minute of ambient sound, just in case. Back in my room, I lined up the timestamps, matched them to Delia's post, cross-checked against the official planning doc I found in my old email draft folder. She'd copied everything: font styles, color codes, even the phrase memory silhouettes from my original deck. Then I froze. There was movement outside my window. Not full figure, just a flicker, enough to know someone had been watching. I didn't move, didn't call anyone, just sat very still and waited for the feeling to pass. It didn't. That's when my phone buzzed. Again. Unknown sender. No message this time, just a scanned image of an envelope, handwriting across the front. To Meryl, do not open until November. The wax seal was red and cracked. I stared at it for a long time before opening the file. I didn't even breathe. By noon the next day, the folder felt heavier than my hands could hold. I'd spent the morning in my rented room printing everything: trust withdrawals, shell companies, screen grabs of Delia's posts. Each page carried the weight of a decade. I closed the file, slid it into my bag, and took a slow breath. The courthouse was only 15 minutes away, but it felt like crossing a continent. I walked up the marble steps, keeping my head steady. Inside, the air smelled like old paper and polished tile. I went to the clerk's desk and handed over my packet. She flipped through it quickly. Tax filings, business records, notarized affidavits. I caught her expression shift when she saw my father's name linked to mine. In the corner of my eye, Ed's secretary, he must have sent her, was loitering by the records office, whispering into her phone. The clerk cleared her throat. "Is there anything else you'd like us to know?" I quoted without blinking. "Justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done." Her eyebrows rose, but she stamped the papers anyway. That sound, ink on paper, felt like a first crack in their armor. My pulse raced but stayed steady. I walked out lighter than when I came in, like the act of filing had pulled something out of me I'd been carrying too long. Outside, I didn't expect to see her. Delia. She was leaning against a silver SUV, phone in hand, sunglasses pushed up onto her hair. She smiled a tight smile. "Meryl, this is all drama. Why drag the courts into family?" I stopped a few feet away. "Drama doesn't empty my bank account," I said. "Fraud does." Her smile didn't break, but her tone cracked just a little. "You're playing a dangerous game." I stepped closer until she had to tilt her chin up. "No, you played it. I'm just turning the lights on." She blinked. Her nostrils flared, but she said nothing else. I walked away without looking back. My heart was hammering, but my steps were even. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of her voice. By evening, my phone chimed. Called her again. A secure link this time. "I regret not acting sooner," the message read. Attached were PDFs, email chains between Sarah, Delia, and a tax attorney discussing reallocation of my trust fund into shell structures, dates, amounts, routing numbers, proof beyond gossip. I sat at the little desk and opened FaceTime with Camille, my lawyer friend in New York, held up the screen so she could see. "Tell me I'm not crazy," I said. She scanned the files for a moment. "You're not crazy. You're holding a conspiracy." My chest tightened, but not from fear. "Then we move," I said. We hung up. I set my phone down and just sat for a moment, the glow from the screen flickering against the walls. Calder wasn't clean. He'd been too close to Delia for too long. But he'd given me the blade I needed now. Whether he was guilty or scared, it didn't matter. His documents mattered. I almost posted something then, one cryptic line, one receipt, But I didn't. Instead, I drafted a press note with names redacted, dates left visible, sent it to an anonymous tip line at a regional paper. I wanted them to start digging, not just me. Then I set up a burner phone, opened a fresh encrypted email, uploaded everything again, this time with photo metadata attached and timestamps. I wanted a trail that couldn't be erased. In the mirror, I practiced a line. I'm not seeking revenge. I'm seeking accountability. My voice sounded low, steady, not like a victim, like a witness. As I left the law firm building, dusk was falling. The street lamps blinked on one by one. I reached the curb just as a black SUV rolled to a stop across from me. The back door opened. Ed stepped out first, then Lorraine. Both looked straight at me. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Their gaze froze me, but only for a second. Then something in me snapped, not into fear, but into clarity. The confrontation was no longer optional. The morning air outside the county records office was damp and cool, but my palms were hot around the folder I carried. Each page inside was a piece of a story they thought they had buried. The clerk at the front desk recognized me from my visits over the past few days and gave a polite nod before sliding my request form across the counter. I wrote it out clearly. Trust document, Vance, Marisol. Her nails clicked against the keyboard as she typed. The screen reflected in her glasses, flickering lines of data. Then she frowned. I'm sorry, she said. We have no record of that trust under your name. My mouth went dry. Run it again, I said, leaning closer. Check custodial files. She did. Another pause. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It's flagged as redacted by custodian request. The words felt like a door slamming. All my documentation, the notarized copies, the bank withdrawals, my grandfather's signature, none of it mattered if the official record was scrubbed. Someone had not only stolen from me, they'd erased me legally. I stood still, breathing in through my nose. Inner voice, steady as a metronome. You can hide the paperwork, but not the footprints it left behind. I took my folder back, thanked the clerk, and walked out into the parking lot. The sun had climbed higher, casting sharp shadows over the concrete. My chest felt tight, but my steps were measured. Each move now was deliberate. I drove straight to the estate. The long driveway cut through rows of old oaks. At the gate, Harper was waiting, leaning against her car. She didn't wave, just straightened when she saw me. Her face said she already knew something. Mom must have had access, I said, voice low. Harper gave a small nod and opened the pedestrian gate. Inside, the foyer smelled like lemon polish and lilies. Lenora sat in the living room, hands folded on her lap like a portrait. She rose when I entered, but didn't speak. Her eyes flickered, recognition, fear, or both. You've been busy, she said finally. I've been thorough, I replied. That flicker again. The tiniest crack in her facade. For years, she'd looked at me like I was the problem, the unstable one. Now she looked at me like she was seeing the whole picture for the first time. Or maybe she was just realizing her picture frame was breaking. I stood in front of her. My voice came out steady, cold. Here's what you took, I said, laying out the evidence on the coffee table. The trust fund documents, bank statements, shell company filings. You erased it because you knew I'd come for it. Lenora's hand trembled as she reached for one page. I did what I thought needed doing, she murmured. What you thought was convenience was betrayal, I said. She inhaled sharply, but I didn't stop. This isn't about your excuses. It's about acknowledgement. I didn't plead. I didn't cry. I simply met her eyes and waited. From my bag, I took out fragments of the original trust documents, pieces Harper had hidden for years in her safe. They still carried my name, my grandfather's initials, enough to force a temporary reinstatement in local court. I held them up without a word. Outside the front windows, the press had already started gathering. Someone must have tipped them off. Cameras clicked, shutters flashed. Delia and Ed would hear about this within the hour. Maybe they already had. But standing there in that room, I felt something settle inside me. This wasn't vengeance. This was reclamation. This was me taking my name back from the margins of their ledgers. I turned and walked out through the tall double doors. The courtyard was empty except for a single parked car. As I stepped onto the gravel, A door slammed. The sound echoed against the stone walls. Someone was watching, waiting. I turned toward the car and realized nothing would ever be the same. The room was a chandelier-lit hush, the kind of quiet that settles right after dessert, but before the forced toasts begin. People lingered near their tables, wine glasses half full, hands resting on linen. Waitstaff cleared plates like shadows. I stood by the side of the stage, my fingers curled around a manila envelope I had rehearsed opening in my mind 1,000 times. Lorraine rose, holding her flute, her smile rigid. "A toast," she began, voice pleasant, practiced. I took 2 steps forward. "Excuse me," I said, firm but calm. Every eye turned. Forks stopped midair. Lorraine's smile faltered. I looked around, faces I hadn't seen in years, some who thought I was dead weight, others who never knew I existed. "There's something I must share," I said, keeping my voice even. "This isn't about revenge. It's about truth." Silence. I moved to the center of the stage. My hand hovered over the mic, but I didn't touch it. I didn't need it. I pulled the envelope out and held it up. I called this the last check they'll ever cash in my name. I opened it slowly, deliberately, and pulled out the copy. Months ago, I wired money for a shared account. Delia took it, in my name, cashed it, lied about it. I set the envelope on the table. And this was my receipt, the proof she didn't know I'd kept. Gasps rippled. A man at the back muttered something. I caught Lorraine's eyes. She didn't blink. I looked at Delia, seated 2 rows deep, staring at the floor. I quoted Maya Angelou, loud enough to be heard. "There's a universe next door where kindness lives. I just chose to open the door." And then I turned. Behind me, a projector screen flickered to life. I stepped aside and held up the next file, then passed it to the technician. "This," I said, "is a court-certified original." The slideshow began, 1 page, then the next. Clear, irrefutable. My name. The trust. The original ownership papers for Southern Oak, stamped, signed, verified. The air shifted. I didn't need to speak. Every person in that ballroom read the pages on that screen with their own eyes. Delia stared straight ahead, frozen. Marcus stood, silent, unreadable. I looked at Lorraine again. "You erased me," I said. "I bring back the signature that erased you." Lorraine tried to cut in. "This is not the place." I raised one hand. "Actually, this is exactly the place." I played the audio, her voice, from an old voicemail Harper had kept. "If she ever comes back, we'll fix the documents. Nobody needs to know." The room cracked open. People turned in their chairs, whispering. Some stood. "You tried to silence me," I said. "I used your own words to speak." Guards stepped forward, but nobody moved. Not yet. The press outside had already started snapping pictures through the side windows. I didn't cry, didn't shake. I stood on that stage and felt the shift happen, like the weight of the house was sliding off my shoulders. A mentor once told me, "Power starts when truth is spoken." I finally understood what he meant. I stepped down from the stage slowly. My shoes tapped against the hardwood, each step louder than the polite claps that tried to follow me. No victory dance, no gloating, just breath, and the long echo of everything they thought I'd never dare say. 2 months had passed, but it felt like years. The air was different now, lighter, quieter, like the static had finally cleared. I stood at the threshold of the house that once belonged to my grandmother. It had been sold to a young couple just starting out. They invited me in for a few final minutes. I told them I wouldn't stay long. I moved through each room slowly, pausing by the kitchen counter where I used to sneak cookies. The floral wallpaper was still there, curling at the edges like the pages of an old book. Upstairs, in the guest room closet, tucked behind an unused drawer, was something I never expected to see again. It was the letter I had written at 18, folded, yellowed slightly at the crease. I sat on the floor, knees drawn up, and read it aloud. "Dear Grandma, I don't know where to start, except to say I miss you." It was raw, honest, scared. I had begged for guidance, for belonging, for someone to say I mattered. Tears slid down my cheeks, not from sorrow, but from release. I whispered, Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means letting go. I caught my reflection in the mirror across the room. I saw a woman who had been broken, but not erased. I smiled, not for the pain that brought me here, but for the strength that helped me stay. 2 weeks later, I sat in a support group circle in the basement of the local library. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and folding chairs scraped the tile as people settled in. My hands trembled slightly in my lap. I wasn't used to rooms like this. I wasn't used to being seen without the armor of distance. When it was my turn to speak, I hesitated. Then I said, "My name is Meryl Ellison Vance." A pause. This time I'm not hiding behind initials or silence. A woman across from me put a hand to her heart. Another nodded. A third let out a quiet sob. For the first time in my life, I felt seen, not as a burden or a threat or a family secret, but as myself, fully, simply. As Thanksgiving approached, I decided not to dread it. I hosted, not family, at least not the kind I came from. These were friends, neighbors, people who knew what it meant to rebuild. Our table was a patchwork of chairs, mismatched dishes, and store-bought pie. It was perfect. "To the family we make," I toasted, raising my glass, "and the truth we live." A little boy beside me leaned in and said, "Thanks, Auntie Meryl." My breath caught, but not from grief, from grace. Later that night, after dishes were done and laughter had faded into yawns, I lit a candle by the window. "For you," I whispered, glancing skyward. "For who I've become." A few days later, I returned to the park, the same bench from the beginning, the same breeze, only now it felt different. I opened my journal. "You're not a story people tell," I wrote, quoting a mentor. "You are the one writing it." I jotted lessons I'd learned, moments I'd survived, and people I had let go, not with bitterness, but with peace. I didn't need revenge, just truth, just space to breathe in my own name. I may not be their daughter, but I am my own woman. And if you're listening, you are not alone either.